daughter through this because you're too. You're going to drag your fucking wife and your daughter through this because you're too fucking bullheaded to get out in front of this and just admit that you made a mistake. And whatever the fuck happened out there, we'll never fucking know because you're too big of a fucking pussy. The evidence clearly indicates that you're involved in this.
No,
It fucking does.
it doesn't. I'm telling you, there is no way that a bullet from my gun was used in these murders.
And I'm telling you that we found this fucking round on February 14th, 2017. And it's been in a secured fucking laboratory, and we've tested other guns.
You could have taken it from somewhere else then, because it's not possible.
I did not take it from somewhere else. It was logged in. It was taken. It was photographed. You think we fucking took a round and threw it down by the dead girl's foot? This ain't fucking TV. This is realistic.
I'm telling you, I can't explain something like that.
And I'm telling you that the fucking analyst explains it. You can't get past this. I'm not on video.
Neither am I.
4 or 5 witnesses didn't see me out there.
Me either.
My round out of my gun wasn't 6 inches away from a dead girl.
Mine neither.
I don't think you're a bad person.
What kind of good person kills 2 people? You're going to pay for what you've done to my wife. You want to fuck with me? Fuck with me, but you leave my wife out of this. Fuck. Leave me out of this.
No, you are involved in this. Your fucking round is there, Rick.
No, it's not.
You're guilty of something. You're guilty, and I know it, and I'm going to fucking prove it.
Hello, and welcome to the first ever live stream for the R&M channel. My name is Ange, also known as Mothman in some places, and I am the creator of the R&M channel. So what you just saw was a very cool animation that our friend NotBB made for us, which basically reenacted some of the interview that we learned about today through the defense filing. So I think the best thing that I can do is just read it because it's a doozy. But welcome everyone. I'm figuring out StreamYard, so bear with me. What kind of good person kills 2 people? It's a great question. What I really liked about this document is that we, for the first time, heard the perspective of Rick Allen, who for a year and a half now has just been this entity without a personality that is basically just invisible, rotting away in DOC. So with that, I think that I know how to share this. Can everybody see this? So I'm going to read it on my own device here because I am blind. But this is the new filing from this afternoon. It was filed by the defense for Richard Allen. It is a motion to suppress the accused's second statement. So that would be Rick Allen's second statement. Woo. I had myself playing in the background. Okay. So let's read it. All right. I don't know how to zoom in, so if y'all can't see it, if it's too small, that's okay. Motion to suppress the accused's second statement. Comes now the accused, Richard Allen, by and through counsel, and moves this court to suppress all statements from his October 26, 2022 interrogation at the hands of law enforcement officer Jerry Holman, who failed to read Rick Allen his Miranda rights while yelling and swearing at Rick Allen, lying to Rick Allen, and attempting to intimidate Rick Allen behind a closed door in a tiny interrogation room at the Lafayette Police Post. Additionally, a key portion of the videotaped interrogation provided to the defense is missing. The missing portion of that video is the beginning of the interrogation when Miranda should have been read. And that, again, I'm sure everybody watching already knows this, but the Miranda they refer to is, I think, Miranda v. someone. The Miranda rights are what you hear on Law and Order and CSI. You have the right to remain silent. Again, you have the right against self-incrimination, or maybe you have the right to an attorney. All of the things that people say before they interrogate you. It's a very important part of due process, because if you are not informed of those rights, then, well, we'll get to it. But the Arizona. Thank you, Lou. Okay, moving on. In support of said motion, the accused states the following. First interrogation. Law enforcement officers requested Rick Allen to appear at the Delphi Police Station to answer questions, and on October 13th, 2022, Allen voluntarily went to the station and sat down with police, thinking he was assisting them in solving the Delphi murders, since he had been on the trails earlier on the day that the victims disappeared. Rick wanted to help out any way he could, and that is clear in the video. This video was previously provided to the court on September 18th, 2023. That was probably through the Franks memo. They probably submitted it as an exhibit. The October 26, 2017 interview is being sent to the court overnight via certified mail for the court's review. The court being Judge Gull. Next page. The two officers that interviewed Rick Allen on that day were Tony Liggett and Steve Mullen. Again, this is his very first interview on October 13th, 2022. The two officers that interviewed Rick Allen on that day were Tony Liggett and Steve Mullen. Tony Liggett, of course, was the lead detective at the time. He is the now sheriff of Carroll County. And Steve Mullen, at this time and still, is the prosecutor's office investigator, which is a newer role that they added for him. Yes, Lynn, always get a lawyer. Always get a lawyer. Even if you don't have to say so. No, that's a good point, Lynn. You definitely always want a lawyer before you talk to the police, even if you're innocent, especially if you're innocent. It's always good to have a lawyer. And that's why the Miranda rights are really important, because a lot of people don't know that they have that right to a lawyer before they are interrogated. All right, number 3. Rick was read his Miranda rights on the 13th and signed an advisement of rights form, which is normal protocol for law enforcement before an interrogation begins. So you're given like a verbal explanation of Miranda, and then you also are signing a waiver saying that you understand your rights and that you would like to willingly proceed and continue to speak to the cops. If I'm saying anything wrong, there's people in here who know a lot more than I do about certain things, so please feel free to correct me. Okay. Number 4, for the first roughly 3/4 of the interview, it is apparent from the interview, Rick believed he was assisting the police in their investigation and search for those that murdered the victims in the Delphi case. Number 5, however, eventually when it became obvious that Liggett and Mullen were actually pointing the finger at Rick Allen as the killer, at one point in the interview, Rick said, quote, "I don't want to be somebody's fall guy, and we're going to try to make pieces of a puzzle fit somewhere they don't fit so that we can close this thing. I'm not saying you guys. Please don't think I'm questioning your integrity. That's not what I'm saying." So at this point, it appears that Rick was kind of on to them, what they were doing. I guess I'm gonna reserve my own opinion until we're done, and then I'll let it rip. Okay, number 6. However, when the Liggett and Mullen, he calls him the Liggett, I think that's a typo. However, when the Liggett and Mullen amped up the intensity of their questioning, even positioning their bodies closer to Rick, Rick said the following, quote, "It's over. I was perfectly fine. I was cooperating. I was going to give you my phone. And then, when you started reading all these documents, that's at the, here's my thing is, I feel like you guys think that I done this. So I'm done. You do what you need to do. It's your job. I understand that, but you better fucking leave my reputation out of it. So you do what you need to do. And then, like I said, when you do find this guy, I will expect the apology. Rick then described how police were trying to ruin his reputation by accusing him of the murders in public, even groping him as they patted him down in the street. Rick was expressing that the mere act of mentioning his name as a possible killer or patting him down on a public street as if he were a criminal would ruin his reputation and was greatly upsetting. Understandable. Luke says, Rick doesn't even want to offend them. Yeah, he's very polite. He seems very polite. Okay. Number 7. Liggett and Mullen did read Rick Allen his Miranda rights before they began their interrogation. Again, that was his first interview on the 13th. And additionally, Rick Allen was aware that he had freedom of movement as he, Rick, ultimately stood up and walked out of the interrogation room. Number 8. However, at the end of the interview that turned into an aggressive interrogation, Rick made it clear that he no longer wanted to talk to law enforcement. Number 9. Within hours of the first interrogation, Liggett drafted an affidavit for a search warrant. Judge Diener then signed the warrant to search Rick's home and his vehicle. On that day, Rick Allen's vehicle was also seized. Number 10, the defense will not be seeking that this first interrogation be suppressed. So this kind of gives a little more context, at least for me. I was wondering what the time frame of that October 13th day was and how things unfolded. So it looks like they invited him and Kathy. I think Kathy was with him that first day. Correct me if I'm wrong. They invited them to the Lafayette Police Post to help and provide info as a witness at the time is what he thought he was. And then after the interview was over, a couple hours later, within hours of the first interrogation, Liggett drafted an affidavit for search warrant. So then they go to his house. So that kind of filled in some timeline gaps for me. Second interrogation. Number 11. On October 13th, 2022, Kathy Allen, Rick's wife, and Rick Allen asked the state police when they could pick up their vehicle that had been seized. They were told that they could pick it up in a couple of days. Number 12. On October 17th, 2022, either Kathy or Rick contacted the state police to determine how and when they could get their vehicle back that had been seized, as they were in need of the vehicle, as Kathy and Rick were having difficulty sharing one vehicle as they worked in 2 different places and needed 2 vehicles. So this is like almost a week now. Let's see. Like 6 days later, they're still, the 17th. So a few days later. Number 13, after a few phone calls with state police, finally on October 26th, Rick and Kathy were scheduled to arrive at the state police post in West Lafayette at 9 a.m. to pick up their vehicle. So they were scheduled to arrive. Number 14, on October 26, 2022, Rick Allen drove with Kathy to the West Lafayette police post to retrieve their vehicle that had been seized 13 days earlier by law enforcement. Number 15, state police had told Rick and Kathy that upon arrival, their car would be released, but never mentioned anything about additional questioning. Number 16, when Rick and Kathy arrived at the station, Coleman met them at the front and said he just had a few things that he wanted to clear up before he released the vehicle. Coleman requested Rick to follow him into the interrogation room without Kathy, and Rick complied. So Holman is like, hey, while you're here, before you go, I just have a couple more loose ends, a couple more questions, a couple things I want to wrap up or whatever, clear up before you can have your car back. Interesting. Number 17. Yes, Lynn. So this second interview was October 26th, and they searched his house on the 13th after that first interview. Okay. Number 17. Kathy was not allowed to participate in the questioning. She was told that she could wait in the lobby. Number 18. Rick arrived with Holman into the interview room. So I don't know, like the legality of a voluntary, which I imagine Rick at this time thought this was, I don't know what he thought actually, so never mind. I don't know if your spouse is generally allowed to accompany you into an interview room if you're not being detained. I don't know. That's a question for like Bob or Kara or Michael, maybe later. But okay. Number 19. However, for unknown reasons, the video provided to the defense is missing the beginning portion of the interview when procedural matters are typically handled by law enforcement, such as the reading of Miranda, advisement of rights, and confirming with the suspect that he is free to leave if in fact the suspect is free to leave. So again, it looks like we have some missing video, particularly the first part of the video where they read Rick his rights. Number 20. In this case, either A, the camera was only turned on after they, Holman and Rick, were already minutes into the interview because the video provided to the defense does not show Holman and Rick entering the room, sitting down, and beginning the interrogation, or B, the camera was recording the entire time, but the beginning of the interview was later edited out before being turned over to the defense in February of 2024. That just happened. So we're in April 2024. Rick was arrested in October of 2022. It's interesting that they didn't get this video until like a month or two ago. That's very interesting to me. Okay. Number 21. Either way, the beginning of the interaction between Holman and Rick in the interrogation room, when introductions are typically made and Miranda rights are always reviewed, is missing. In the 70-plus years of experience between co-counsels, this is highly unusual, especially on a high-profile case of this nature. I'd say that's quite unusual. Number 22. The defense has not been provided with any report explaining this missing part of the video. Number 23. To make matters more suspicious, Holman claims in his November 1st, 2022 report, memorializing his October 26th interrogation of Rick Allen, the following, quote, I asked Mr. Allen if he remembered the other detectives reading him his Miranda rights, and he said yes. I told him he was free to go at any time and that the door was unlocked. I'm going to pull up the PCA after we're finished reading this, just because I feel like there was like a sentence or two in the original PCA saying something like similar, like Rick was advised and he knew he was free to leave, and I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and look, but okay. Number 24. Holman's report does not identify who the other investigators are that purportedly reviewed Miranda with Rick. Number 25. Holman's report does not detail when, where, or how these purported investigators purportedly reviewed Miranda with Rick. Number 26. Holman's words quoted in paragraph 23 above appear nowhere on video. In other words, Holman is not shown asking Rick Allen about his rights, nor is Holman viewed telling Rick Allen that he is free to leave. Number 27. In his report, Holman indicates that those words were stated to Rick Allen at the very beginning of the interview. The beginning of the interview is missing. Okay. Number 28. The defense has diligently searched through the discovery for any Miranda and waiver of rights form signed by Rick Allen on October 26, 2022. The defense has found none. So again, you're advised verbally of your Miranda rights, and you verbally, agree that you understand them. And then generally, I think always, again, correct me, BB, if I'm wrong. Then you are also given a form, a waiver, saying that you understand your rights, that you don't want a lawyer, that you are willingly agreeing to speak to law enforcement, understanding that you are free to go at any time, that you're not under arrest, and that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. So it looks like they're not only missing the video of that disclosure, but they're also missing any waiver form. Okay, number 28. Oh, wait, I already read that. Number 29. The defense has diligently searched through the discovery for any reports by state troopers who were on duty that day, such as Jay Harper and David Vito, who would have potentially read Rick his Miranda rights on October 26, 2022. The defense has found no such reports. Jay Harper is the lead detective for the Delphi Unified Command Task Force with an ISP, I guess, or I don't know. He's the most senior, at least, officer. I actually spoke to Harper one time. I just remembered that now. More on that later. David Vito is the trooper who conducted the famous, infamous Keegan Kline interrogation in August 2020. So that 194-page interrogation that we now know had no basis in legitimate connection to the Delphi murder case. But anyway, number 30. Just as Brad Holder's February 17, 2017 interview is missing, just as the mimicked crime scene found on Holder's social media page is missing and still has not been turned over to the defense, which the defense thankfully located in Georgia, and just as Rick's original taped statement to Dan Doolin in front of a grocery store in February 2017 is missing, the beginning portion of Holman's interview with Rick Allen is also missing. One second, Mom. That's very interesting. They have a lot of missing stuff. Okay. Moving right along. This is annoying. This is like frustrating. I haven't finished this document. I only got through maybe half of it before we started, so I'm going to be experiencing this all in real time with y'all. But I'm already I've already read this part, and it still just shouldn't be baffling anymore, I guess. But it certainly feels pretty unusual that such a high-profile case would be so sloppy. Okay, 31. The defense has diligently searched through the discovery for audio or video by any law enforcement from October 26, 2022, in which it can be heard or seen that Rick Allen was read his Miranda rights or told that he was free to leave. Sorry. The defense has found none. 32. I'm blind. Therefore, at this time, it appears to the defense that Jerry Holman's claims in his report that Rick Allen was asked about his Miranda rights and told that he was free to leave are false, and that key video evidence that would prove as much is missing. So he's lying, but the proof of such is gone, which also feels like a theme. Number 33. The following, I love when they do this. The following are true and accurate depictions of what occurred at Allen's October 26, 2022 interrogation, as shown on the videotape of said interrogation that was not missing or deleted, but actually provided to the defense. A. On video, Holman never read Rick Allen his Miranda rights, nor mentioned them to Rick Allen. B. Rick Allen was placed in a tiny, confined room without windows. C. Rick Allen was placed in a tiny, confined room, and Holman shut the door. D. Rick Allen was placed in a tiny, confined room with Jerry Holman while the door was shut. Not a place I would want to be. Hi, low light. Hi, post fun. Sorry, I'm just seeing a lot of our fun video. Thank you all. Okay. E. We're on. Did I put on page? Yes. We're on page 6. A considerable size difference. A considerable size difference existed between Rick Allen and Jerry Holman. So Rick is what, 5? Is the consensus of he's what, 5'4", 5'5"? Jerry Holman, I don't know how tall he is, but he's certainly taller than that. And he's a big guy, so that feels like a fair statement. F. A power differential existed as Holman was a state trooper in his home court, the Lafayette Police Post, while Rick Allen was a CVS worker from Delphi who had only driven to West Lafayette to pick up a vehicle that he and his wife needed for transportation. That is important when it comes to coercion. Maybe he didn't explicitly say, I'm not giving you your car back until you talk to me, but it was implied, hey, before I give you your car, let me just clear up, some loose ends. Let me ask you a few questions. That is coercive, whether or not it's like on its face seems that way. It is. Like Rick needed his car back to get to work. That's his survival. And clearly he felt he needed to speak, appease Holman before he got his car back. That's annoying. That's not a good thing for Holman. G, Rick Allen was never told that he was being videotaped. Huh. I don't know. I'm trying to think back to interrogations like that I've watched before. I don't know off the top of my head if I remember like if that's a common reason. That's like a common thing that they usually say, but it just feels like it would be a courteous thing. H, when Jerry Holman would leave the room, he told Rick Allen to sit tight at the 9-minute and 25 and 45-minute and 20-second marks, or, quote, hang on 1 second at the 16:40 mark. In other words, Jerry Holman told Rick Allen that he, Allen, could not leave. I could see how, someone could say that's nitpicky, but if Jerry Holman, if I'm in there for an interview and I've already been bothered by these investigators, 13 days previously, I might also think that was like an order. Although, no, me personally, I probably would have. Doesn't matter. Anyway, number I, right? I. When Jerry Holman would leave the room and tell Rick, when Jerry Holman would leave the room, he told Rick to sit tight. He, Holman, would shut the door. Okay. J. Jerry Holman lied to Rick Allen during the interrogation several times, including the following. 1. At the 7-minute and 10-second mark, Jerry Holman told Rick Allen, quote, we have experts that say that's you on the bridge and that's your voice on the video, end quote. There is no evidence that supports this statement. Jerry Holman lied to Rick Allen. Yeah, hold on 1 second. I like when Andy does lists. A lot of people, I've seen both. I've seen people that really like Andy's writing style, and or Brad. I don't know. I'm assuming this seems to me like it's more Andy than Brad, but it could be Brad. But whoever wrote this, a lot of people have criticized the writing of the defense team in the past. They don't think it's like professional or like legalese enough. I like it. I think it's effective. Anyway, 2. At the 15-minute, 25-second mark, Holman told Rick Allen, quote, experts are saying that's you on the video, and experts are saying you said down the hill, end quote. There is no evidence that supports this statement. Jerry Holman lied to Rick Allen. 3. At the 15-minute, 7-second mark, Holman tells Rick Allen that witnesses saw a gun in his pocket, end quote. There is no evidence that anyone claims to have seen a gun in Rick's pocket. Holman lied to Rick Allen. 4. At the 39-minute, 5-second mark, Holman states, I'm not lying to you about anything. Sorry. Holman says, I'm not lying to you about anything. Everything I'm telling you is fact. The experts say you said go down the hill, end quote. Holman was lying to Rick about many things, and not everything that Holman told Rick was fact. And at the 42-minute and 33-second mark, Holman said, quote, I'm not lying to you, Rick. That's unethical, end quote. Holman had been lying to Rick. Okay. Jerry Holman told Rick Allen in what was supposed to be an exploratory interview, quote, this is where I stopped reading, so I'm sorry if I'm interrupting myself, but I'm reading this for the first time now with you, so, okay. Jerry Holman told Rick Allen in what was supposed to be an exploratory interview, quote, The prosecutor and the other investigators, they want to see you, lock you up, and throw away the key, end quote. That, I believe, is very true. I believe that was a true statement by Jerry Holman. L. Jerry Holman barked at Rick Allen in what was supposed to be an exploratory interview, quote, "If you don't tell me, you're going down for this," end quote. So he's being the bad cop here, I guess. Although at this point, it's just Holman and Rick in the interview room, which is also interesting. M. Jerry Holman told Rick Allen in what was supposed to be an exploratory interview, quote, "Do you realize the death penalty is on the table for this?" M. Jerry Holman told Rick Allen in what was supposed to be an exploratory interview. Oops, read that already. N. At various times, Jerry Holman yelled at Rick Allen, including using profanity-laced language while accusing Rick Allen of the murders. That'll be fun to watch. Oh, Rick Allen asked Holman to stop the interview. Uh-oh. Rick Allen asked Holman to stop the interview. Rick said, quote, "I'm done," early into the interrogation at the 12-minute mark, but Holman continued his interrogation. P. The state police never turned over the vehicle to Kathy Allen after Rick was arrested. Returning the vehicle to Rick and Kathy was merely a subterfuge to get Rick to the police post to be interrogated. They didn't even give poor Kathy her fucking car back. That's really dirty. I mean, it's not the dirtiest thing, but that they've done this that day, but like their sole purpose, they literally used that vehicle as like a carrot to get them there. That is coercive. That is coercion, Gary. Okay. The law. 34. The Indiana Supreme Court dealt with a very similar fact pattern in State versus ER, not going to read the whole thing, which reversed the Indiana Appellate Court, holding that ER's constitutional rights had been violated, therefore suppressing his statements. 35. In State versus ER, the accused had voluntarily driven to the police station at the request of the police to answer questions concerning an allegation of inappropriate touching. We're going to talk more about this case that they're citing in a second, but I want to finish reading. In this case, Allen voluntarily arrived at the station to pick up a vehicle, but unlike ER, Allen was unaware that he would be asked questions once he arrived at the Lafayette police post. DB, I think this is the appellate case that Andy, this was one of Andy's cases, I believe, originally, that they ended up taking to the appellate court for Miranda violations. Yep. Interesting. All right, 36. The following occurred when ER was interrogated compared to when Rick Allen was interrogated. A. ER was interrogated in a small windowless room. Rick Allen was also interrogated in a small windowless room. B. Law enforcement officers failed to provide Miranda warnings to ER. Video shows that Holman failed to provide Rick Allen his Miranda warnings. C. Multiple times, law enforcement told ER to, quote, "sit tight." On multiple occasions, Holman told Rick Allen to sit tight when Holman, would leave the interrogation room. D. In ER's interrogation, law enforcement actually told ER that ER was able to walk out of the interrogation room door if he wanted. ER was also told that ER, did not have to even talk to law enforcement if he didn't want to. Still, the Indiana Supreme Court found that even with those particular statements by law enforcement to ER, it was not enough to cause ER to feel free to leave. Contrast ER's interrogation with Rick Allen's interrogation. On video, Jerry Holman never told Rick Allen that he was free to leave, nor did Jerry Holman ever tell Rick that he did not have to talk to law enforcement. So they gave this ER individual even more I guess, grace and latitude to leave the room than Holman afforded Rick, which is Interesting, considering that this got overturned on appeal, or at least that did. E. In ER, the police significantly undercut any initial message of freedom when they dramatically changed the interrogation atmosphere when a second officer entered the room and became more aggressive. So they brought in their bad cop in ER's case at some point. Although there was only one officer involved, Holman, that officer started the interrogation in a much calmer manner before amping up the intensity, ultimately erupting with cursing and yelling at Rick Allen. F. The officers did not tell ER that he, ER, was not under arrest. Holman never told Rick Allen that he was not under arrest. In fact, when Rick Allen continually denied having anything to do with the murders, as well as words to the effect that Holman had made up his mind, so go ahead and arrest me, Holman never told Rick, you are not under arrest. Interesting. Okay. G. Police never told ER that he, ER, could end the interrogation at any time. Holman never told Rick Allen that he could end the interrogation at any time. H. The officers repeatedly told ER to explain what happened, coaxing him to tell us how, or tell us now, so that we know that you're being honest with us and not lying. Holman repeatedly told Rick Allen to explain what happened and attempted to coax Rick Allen to talk to him for a variety of reasons. So this is Holman trying to be, I guess, the good cop and the bad cop, which is really funny because he's just like a really bad cop. In ER, the officers were explicit that they believed ER had engaged in the accused conduct and that their questions were accusatory, not exploratory. Throughout the interrogation, Holman explicitly told Rick Allen that he, Holman, the prosecutor, and other law enforcement officers all believed that Rick Allen had engaged in the accused conduct of murder, and Holman's questions throughout the entire interrogation were accusatory, not exploratory. Included in the videotaped interrogation are the following exchanges that highlight the accusatory, not exploratory, nature of Holman's interrogation of Rick Allen. And I'm going to play our video again because it's good and I want to watch it again. So don't go away, y'all. This is the next part of this.
Fucking what? You're going to drag your fucking wife and your daughter through this because you're too fucking bullheaded to get out in front of this and just admit that you made a mistake. And whatever the fuck happened out there, we'll never fucking know because you're too big of a fucking pussy. The evidence clearly indicates that you're involved in this.
No,
It fucking does.
it doesn't. I'm telling you, there is no way that a bullet from my gun was used in these murders.
And I'm telling you that we found this fucking round on February 14th, 2017. And it's been in a secured fucking laboratory and we've tested other guns.
You could have taken it from somewhere else then, because it's not possible.
I did not take it from somewhere else. It was logged in. It was taken. It was photographed. You think we fucking took a round and threw it down by the dead girl's foot? This ain't fucking TV. This is realistic.
I'm telling you, I can't explain something like that.
And I'm telling you that the fucking analyst explains it. You can't get past this. I'm not on video.
Neither am I.
4 or 5 witnesses didn't see me out there.
Me either.
My round out of my gun wasn't 6 inches away from a dead girl.
Mine neither.
I don't think you're a bad person.
What kind of good person kills 2 people? You're going to pay for what you've done to my wife. You want to fuck with me? Fuck with me, but you leave my wife out of this. Fuck. Leave me out of this.
No, you are involved in this. Your fucking round is there, Rick.
No, it's not.
You're guilty of something. You're guilty, and I know it, and I'm going to fucking prove it.
I was muted. Sorry, I'm unmuted now. Okay. Thank you, DB, for that animation. That was very, very cool and very helpful. I didn't enjoy watching it, but I enjoyed it. Okay. Jay. Police questioning of ER was prolonged, lasting almost an hour. The questioning was sustained and relatively drawn out, especially compared to roadside traffic stop questioning. Holman's questioning of Rick Allen was nearly 3 times longer than law enforcement questioned ER. Holman's prolonged questioning lasted 2 hours and 41 minutes. Of course, that represents the length of the questioning that was actually videotaped. Since there is missing videotape, the entire length of questioning is unknown. The questioning was sustained and drawn out over that time, especially when compared to roadside traffic stop questioning. If anyone, like, I don't know if Luke or DB or someone else knows, I don't know if someone knows why they keep referring, I guess because a traffic stop questioning is a similar, like, I'm sure someone knows. Okay. Okay. The officers continued the interrogation of ER past the time that he, ER, was supposed to pick up his daughter. Rick went to the station to pick up his vehicle, but Holman never mentioned anything about where or how Rick or his wife were to pick up the car. L. At the conclusion of the interrogation, ER was allowed to leave and return home. This fact is mentioned in the Court of Appeals opinion, but not the Supreme Court opinion. Rick Allen was not free to leave, as he was handcuffed and arrested on camera after over 2 hours and 40 minutes of denying involvement in the murders. Okay, so at the end of the interviews, they handcuffed him and arrested him. That makes sense. 37. The facts involving Holman's handling of Rick Allen's interrogation are more egregious than those facts in the ER in several ways. For example, the Indiana Supreme Court found that ER's constitutional rights had been violated even when ER had been allowed to leave the police station, while in the case at hand, Holman knew the entire time that he was interrogating Rick Allen that at the end of the interview, he, Holman, would be arresting Rick Allen, as Allen did not make any statements to Holman that were not already known. The entire interview was Holman accusing and Rick denying. It's interesting that they lured him to the police station to arrest him. That's interesting. I'm writing something down on a piece of paper, which I don't. Okay. 39. Law enforcement clearly knew ahead of Rick Allen's interrogation that they would be arresting Rick Allen for the murders. This makes my tummy hurt. However, rather than arrest Rick Allen at his home or work or after pulling him over, Holman waited until he had one more opportunity to interrogate Rick Allen without Mirandizing him. Just answered my own question. 40. Holman knew that Rick had walked out of the October 13th, 2022 interrogation with Mullen and Liggett, and therefore it was unlikely that Rick would answer any more questions with Holman unless he felt he was not allowed to leave. Miranda would have been a nuisance that would likely cause Rick to walk out on Holman the way that Rick walked out on Liggett and Mullen. If so, Holman would not be able to secure a confession that he, Holman, clearly wanted to secure on his own. Yeah, I think Holman wanted to be the guy. I think we have maybe some ego at play here. I don't know if I've mentioned this on a live before, but did y'all know that like week 2 after the murders, during the investigation, like literally 2 weeks after the murders, Holman, Hammond, Liggett, and I don't know, probably another person or two, were literally in a conference room talking about who would play them in the Delphi Murders movie 2 weeks after. I think Holman was probably still thinking he was gonna like get some spectacular confession out of this guy that was clearly just, you know. Okay, 41. According to State versus ER, a defendant is required to show by a preponderance of the evidence that he was subjected to custodial interrogation, meaning like while in custody. 42. The videotaped interrogation of Rick Allen shows by preponderance of the evidence that Rick Allen was subjected to a custodial interrogation. I don't know how to do a poll. Why did we arrest him after no new evidence was gathered? Yet enough to arrest him at the start of the interview when he was free to go. Yep. I don't know the answer to that. I think maybe Holman's lazy and he wanted to arrest him at his... Well, and I also think that arresting Rick at the police station added another layer of that, like, coercive. Rick is less likely to, like, object or slam the door in his face or, you know, hide in his house until his lawyer gets there. There's a lot of reasons, I guess, that it would just be easier to lure someone to the police station and then arrest them there, which is really funny because, like, imagine if all criminals could just be arrested at the police department. Anyway. I mean, it's not funny, but it's funny. Okay. 43. Additionally, the defendant is required to allege custodial interrogation in the absence of Miranda warnings. We're almost done. Yeah, he knew he was going to arrest him the whole time. I believe that he absolutely knew that he was going to arrest him the whole time. 100%. And I agree with Louise. Jerry Holman is the most pathetic person I've ever read about. He would be played by Porky Pig or the Turtle. I also did. 44. The videotaped interrogation of Rick Allen shows that Holman did not provide Rick Allen with Miranda warnings and then subjected Rick Allen to a custodial interrogation. 45. Furthermore, ER is required to point to, quote, some evidence that his statements were made in violation of his constitutional rights, end quote. 46. The videotaped statement of Rick Allen provides a whole host of evidence, as detailed herein, that statements made by Rick Allen on the day in question violated both his state and federal constitutional rights against self-incrimination. Wherefore, the accused Rick Allen requests this court to suppress all statements made by Rick Allen at his October 26, 2022 interrogation, and to issue a finding that Jerry Holman and the state police violated Rick Allen's constitutional rights. I like that little addition at the end. I don't know what would that be like. So an official finding, I don't know. That's not like a sanction, right? I don't know what that is, but okay. I'm going to put this down. I don't feel like I need to pull up the well, I will just because I have it. This is the appellate case that's referenced, ER, Supreme Court of Indiana. I will post it if anyone is interested in reading it afterwards, but this was actually a case that, as you can see here, Andrew Baldwin represented this defendant originally. So them including this case in this motion, I imagine would be like kind of a signal to Judge Bull, like this is an appealable issue. This is an issue. The Supreme Court, I mean, Indiana Supreme Court, and then I think, I don't know how I think that both courts determined that his rights were violated, right? So if they were to raise this issue, like after maybe a conviction, or it was Supreme Court of Indiana, they lost at the Circuit Court. Okay, so they appealed it then to the Supreme Court of Indiana. Gotcha. Yeah, so the Supreme Court of Indiana said, so they tried to appeal it in Circuit Court, lost, appealed it to the Supreme Court of Indiana, and won. So I imagine if I were Judge Bull, the message I would take from that is this should be suppressed because it was unlawful. His rights were violated. And if you don't suppress it, we're going to take it to the Supreme Court of Indiana and probably win again if we've done it before. That's just kind of my interpretation. I'm going to send out hey, I agree with this comment. I think that I know how to do it. I'm telling you, they didn't lose his interview. They looked into him in 2017, cleared him, only coming back later to frame him for the election. I don't know like how thoroughly he was looked into, but I also am of the opinion that they probably, at least someone or someone's probably were aware of Rick Allen before September 2022. Can't prove it. It's just a theory. But it wouldn't surprise me when they couldn't, when the clients did not pan out for them, maybe in the way that they were hoping. How do I invite someone here? Oh, I found it. And PCA, okay. So this is a little more detail from the October 26th interview, and this is from the original PCA. Oops. So he voluntarily came to the Indiana State Police Post on the 26th. He spoke with investigators and stated that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow the Sig Sauer Model P226 firearm. When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of victim 1 and victim 2. He again admitted that he was on the trail, but denied knowing victim 1 or 2 and denied any involvement in their murders. He did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found in between the bodies of victim 1 and victim 2. So really what he said was, I don't think I'm going to go through the whole thing, but I do think that maybe, so why would they try and suppress this interrogation if it didn't yield any new information? For starters, because it was the interrogation that led to his arrest, so I feel like that's just an important piece of it, but also this kind of confirms it. So if Pullman is asking him questions to like more narrowly box him into being the only person that could have committed the crime, meaning he confirmed that he never allowed anyone, at least as far as the PCA says, he confirmed that he never allowed anyone to use or borrow his gun, which is like a responsible thing for a gun owner to do, like generally not lend out your firearm to people that aren't you. So of course he's going to answer that honestly. When asked about the unspent bullet, he didn't have an explanation. That's misleading. It's not that he didn't have an explanation. He said, like, there's no fucking way because I was, it's not my gun, it's not my bullet. But was there another part of this that I said I was going to? Lynn says they might want to suppress the video. You mean the Lynn? Are you talking about the bridge guy video, like the one that Libby? If you ignore all the evidence against Richard Allen, he looks innocent. That's an interesting way to sum it up. Rick's explanation was LOL, no. So I'm just processing this. If they had me found on video, they would have turned it over to the defense right away, and they didn't. Hey, CJ. CJ's here. For everyone who participated, oh, can we put the link for the fundraiser in the chat, please? Should have done that at the beginning. For everyone who participated in CJ's 25.5-hour live stream the other day, or yesterday and the day before, thank you all. I had a blast. I didn't catch the entire thing. I actually took like 2 or 3 sleeps from, between the time that CJ started and finished that. But that was quite a marathon. I don't think I've ever seen a YouTube live go on that long. The reason the video can't be found anymore, if you try and go watch it, I guess YouTube has parameters around live streams, which we didn't know about. Yes. But yeah, apparently a live can only be like 10 or 12 hours long, and if it's any longer, they don't do it. So that sucks, but it had to be there, I guess. And I believe YouTube deleted it. It's gone forever. That really sucks. I wish there was a way to. CJ, does StreamYard still have like part of it? It said that it did. I know. So I don't know how to do a poll, and now I don't remember what I was going to ask everybody, but I'm curious, like, okay, if you were a juror, does it seem to you like this was a custodial interview? Meaning, did it seem like Rick Allen was or should have at least felt free to leave and come and go? Did this feel like a voluntary or a custodial interview, having read the document now together? I don't know how to. I don't know how to do poll. So if you think yes, that it was custodial, that he should have been. I have to do it on YouTube. Oh, okay. Let me try. Please hold, y'all. It was an ambush. Cops intimidated him. We go for Reenactment with me. Oh, cool. This is so okay. I found it. So, was this a serial? I'm just trying. I just heard someone. CJ. Hey,
Can you hear me?
CJ. Yes.
Perfect.
Okay, start poll. So custodial interview meaning he was in custody, right? Hey, CJ. Okay, I'm back now.
How's it going? Sorry, I got in a little late. It's been a doozy.
Oops. Are we good? I can take this down. How are you feeling, CJ?
Not good, brother. Not
really?
good.
Are you
No.
sick?
Yeah, yeah, it's been a rough one.
Mm. You're sitting in the dark. I don't blame you, I guess, if you're not feeling good.
Yeah, yeah, no lights, just rest.
Oh my gosh, Meow. I'm gonna kick your ass after this. Thank you for that. Our first ever super chat, which will be going to the fund, the Rick Allen Fund, if I can figure out how to do it. If not, same as CJ. I'm going to steal CJ's policy on this. If we can't get it to the fund in time, it will go to Kathy, but I feel like we could do it. CJ, what was your high and your low of the live stream? I have to know.
I think the high was just honestly having so many guests on. We had just normal people, people that weren't necessarily creators, but had a good conversation with them. There was someone that came on named Kaiser, and he's a
Yeah.
lobbyist in Indiana. So he actually found me on Twitter and followed me on Twitter. And he's got like somewhere like 15 or 16,000 followers on Twitter. So it's just kind of cool that like people you have no idea of, that you haven't necessarily heard of, and they're out there doing great work, and they can just hop on and have a conversation with you. So that was definitely cool. The low was definitely near the end. Of course, near the end when Bob and Michael came on, I was running on fumes, but having them on was, I wanted to be able to stay on there longer for everybody, but I didn't have it in me.
25 hours, CJ. I think you did it. I think you're good. I think that was good. Yeah, I think you gave the people enough. Yeah, Bob and Michael were on for a while. I want to say like at least a few hours. Right?
Yeah, they were on for a few hours, and then Travis came on. Travis was probably on there for at least an hour at the end.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So.
I saw Travis. I saw Bob. I saw Michael. I saw Travis. I, of course, saw Gambies. Who else did I see? Dan. Dan was with you most of the day.
Yep.
Hoosier. Hoosier was on. I saw Hoosier.
Yep.
That was really fun. So how much did y'all race from start to finish? Do you know like what your starting and your ending was?
I believe that if I remember correctly, we started at $30,020, and by the time we got off, it was at 37,000.
Damn.
Yep.
That's pretty good.
Yep. It was awesome.
That is awesome. PJ, you don't have to stay with us. You can leave anytime. This is not a custodial interview. Oh, should we check the folder, by the way? Let's see.
Yeah, if I do an Irish goodbye, you know that maybe I was gonna throw up or something, but for right now, I'm all right.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder. So, CJ, what do you think about this? Have you had a chance to read it yet? The motion today?
Yes.
Okay. What are your lay it on us? What do you think? What are your thoughts?
So I only read over it the one time, so I haven't dove too deep in it, but just on a surface level, I think it's sad. I think that there's a lot of people that it seems like have this opinion of, well, Richard Allen had to have been the guy. They probably had all this evidence against him and whatnot, and that's why they went and got him. And if you read that conversation between him and Holman, he's getting talked to like a dog, and there's people who say, well, where's Richard Allen saying he didn't do it? Well, if you read the conversation, he did say, I didn't do it, and I have no idea how you found this around there.
Yeah, he did. He was indignant, really.
Yeah, and then he gets I'm gonna call it a threat because the way I read it, it was, it wasn't a specific threat, but it says your wife and your daughter, you're gonna bring them into this. So I mean,
Yeah, I didn't
some of
like
the
that.
things that we've been shouting from the rooftop, that it's confirmed in what Holman is saying.
Yeah, I think that, my, I guess, theory or my stance has always been a big part of the reason that they are keeping him in DOC and have made every effort to keep him in DOC from the very beginning is because they want to keep him as hidden from the public and as isolated as possible. And I don't just mean isolated from his attorneys and his family, which I think is part of it, but I mean like he has no personality. The public, like he's not been humanized at all to the
Right.
public. They've the only time the public has seen Rick Allen is in like the very few pictures that we've seen from poor Kathy's Facebook, and the instances of him being like shackled and dragged through the courthouse like a dog on chains. So I mean, that's really our only context of who Rick Allen is. And obviously the police are going to omit details that don't serve their PCA or that don't support their theory of the crime, that don't support that Rick is the guy. So
Right.
people are saying, well, why isn't he proclaiming his innocence? He did. He fuck you, I'm not the guy, Like
Mm-hmm.
he was
Right.
very, very passionate about that. And that's what else has he been, proclaiming, or what else are they not letting us see or hear about him? Really
Right. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. He has no personality. All all that we see is this monster shackled in, um, getting led in by what seems like always 10 plus law enforcement officers. It takes that many guys to control a 5'4", 130-pound at one time Richard Allen.
Right.
But when you read today's filing and we finally get to hear what Richard Allen sounds like a little bit, even though it's just text on a page. Hell, that's probably what I would have said if I was Richard Allen and got arrested. At no point, in my opinion, does he ever say anything suspicious. At no point is he like, well, I may have done it. No, it's straight up, I didn't do it, and I don't know how that round got there.
I think it's funny too that he challenges. Holman tries to use that, that like good cop bullshit that I feel like a lot of cops use when they're like, "Look, you're not a bad guy. Like, I'm not saying you're a bad guy." While he's
Right.
accusing him of murder, Rick says, "You don't think that somebody who you're saying killed two kids is a bad guy?" He
Right.
like calls him. So I mean, I don't know. I'm not. How do I mute? Trying to find the photo. Sorry. Yeah, like I think that it's tricky, like trying not to get into like what a guilty person versus an innocent person acts like, because everybody's different and behavioral analysis is not really, it's obviously not a science. But it doesn't seem like the way that the interview is portrayed in this filing, it certainly doesn't seem like the behavior of a man who for 6 years has been living in the town where the murders occurred. Like, it just doesn't seem like the behavior of a guilty man,
Right.
I don't know. I also don't know. How would you act, CJ, if you were in his situation? What do you think you would be doing?
That's a good question. It's if I was in Rick's situation, and that's why I think the more we hear some of the things he's said, which obviously we're going to hear a lot at the trial, I'm sure. However, just this little snippet, if you can get information that you could potentially put yourself in his shoes and say, yeah, that's maybe what I would have done. It seems like we get these snippets of Richard Allen trying to help. You could argue, depending on what the truth ends up being, he goes to the police and he talks to him and says, hey, I was there that day. Did he say that because he actually was there that day and is the killer, or did he say that because he was trying to help? And then you see this conversation he has with Holman. I know not a lot is said other than I didn't do it, and I don't know how the round got there. However, all he had to say right up front was, I'm not saying anything, get me an attorney. So he's at least willing to sit there and have this conversation.
Right.
But so in my opinion, I mean, it seems like he's trying to help up until we get to the point of, hey, you're the killer, and F this and F that from Holman, right? And then that's
Mhm.
kind of when Rick is like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, said she'd be violent. I don't know. It was easy to say like what we would or wouldn't do in that situation. I just if I were innocent and being accused of something, okay, so this is like not a comparable example at all, but it's the best example I can think of. Putting myself kind of in his shoes. So recently, the unraveling was me specifically. I was accused of really awful behavior and like bullying and antagonizing someone in recovery and all kinds of things that are just so far outside the realm of like anything that I would ever imagine doing to another person, whether I like them or not, just like not within the parameters of my morals and my ethics, and just horrible, horrible things. And
Right.
and I was innocent of them, right? I didn't do them. And it was really destabilizing. I think that it's really destabilizing to be accused of something that you know that you did not do at all. So there's that initial kind of like, I don't know, rebellion or defiance or maybe panic because it's confusing and it's destabilizing.
Right.
But in my situation, which is 1/1,000,000th, a fraction of what Rick was probably experiencing, it was comforting because I knew that I didn't have anything to worry about. Like, I knew that eventually, if and when, the truth came out, that I had nothing to worry about. Like, I knew I'm good, right? Like, I know what I've done and what I haven't done. I'm innocent of this, and eventually, like, the truth will come out. I don't have to worry about any, like, aside from, like, reputation death, like, any serious consequences. So if I were accused of something like murdering 2 girls in the United States of America as a law-abiding citizen, as we know Rick Allen was, surely he was thinking, I'm innocent, so I have nothing to worry about, right? Like, surely this is not going to devolve. He could have never anticipated
Right.
how this would play out. And this is obviously, I'm coming from the assumption that he is truly like a factually innocent man for purposes of this conversation. But like, he never in a million years could have probably imagined that he would be not only accused, but like arrested and charged with something that he didn't do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And, I'm coming at it from the angle of him being factually innocent as well for this conversation. So that way no one gets confused on my stance. But, when you think about what he was probably going through, even just in the station talking to Holman, just what you would feel, what you would think, the sensations you would have. And I saw Hoosier's comment there come up and saying, that Richard Allen was direct and to the point, which could lead you to believe someone's telling the truth. He doesn't. I don't see this elaborate explanation, this elaborate story. It's just straight up, No. You know, hey, okay, how'd that round get there? I don't know. But the moment that he would have started thinking, oh shit, they think I did it, when he's directly accused of doing it, you know, you start sweating, maybe you start shaking, your heart's racing, you're having trouble remembering or putting a sentence together in your mind because your head's spinning. Oh, and then by the way, I'm gonna bring your wife and daughter up too. So you know, I'm sure the dude was absolutely terrified. However, in his responses, you see him hold it together, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. And in his responses, I don't see the, oh shit, I'm caught.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let me start spinning, you know, words or whatever sentences. I don't see that. And that's
Right.
how I would expect. And again, obviously everybody's different. There's always a chance that someone could still hold it together, but I just don't see the, oh my God, I'm caught. Let me just start spewing out crazy things of, well, you know what, the bullet actually got there because I was out there shooting in the woods and
Or
so of
yeah.
course, you know what I mean?
Or maybe I have let someone use my gun. Like he was
Right.
consistent from what we can see at least.
Right.
Yellow, I know that you probably aren't going to come on and talk about this, but this comment that Yellow made is really, I think, important when it comes to the what was the most recent thing with the confession? Oh, okay, when they're outlining the most recent motion, CJ, help me, where they talk about the confessions, they talk about the behaviors he's exhibiting while in his cell.
Yeah. Okay.
Motion to suppress, right? The confessions, I think is what that was.
Yes.
So, you know, obviously we know that now that neither girl was shot, but we didn't know that for sure until after Rick was arrested and the discovery and motions have come out over the past year and a half.
Right.
I don't know how much Rick knows, but it's interesting that he's saying that in his confession that they had been shot, because if all Rick is going off of is what he was like told and during his interrogation, you know, there's a unspent, you know, how did your bullet get there? Maybe he thought, like,
Yeah.
to me, it seems like someone who really has no idea what happened.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you. This is speculation on my part, of course. However, um, you know, there's been a lot made about the number of times that Richard confessed or made these incriminating statements. And I have speculated that maybe the reason he did it so many times is because he was told, hey, say X, Y, and Z, and he only said X, right? So, well, hey, that wasn't good enough. You're going to have to do it again. You're going to have to do it again, or else you're going to get the hose again. You know what I mean? I've speculated that. And we'll see. But if people want us to believe that Richard had this heavy weight on him from this guilty conscience, and he had to tell what he actually did to get it off his chest, he sure isn't doing a good job. You know what I
No.
mean?
Yeah, he's definitely not. He's definitely not. And the 26th of October, this is interesting, Hoosier. So, Hoosier, if you were Rick, I'm imagining it would seem, you know, it'd feel like that was a threat. And he did seem to get most, like, animated, at least in this 13 pages of what we have. He got most animated when it came to Kathy, his wife, which makes sense.
Yeah. And what, just reading that little blurb that Holman says about Kathy and Richard's daughter, you know, what what exactly does that mean? You're gonna drag your wife and daughter into this. So does Richard think, oh my God, they're gonna arrest my wife and daughter? Does he think there's gonna be pitchforks brought out for his wife and daughter? What does that mean exactly?
I don't know. Like, make this easy for me, or else I'm going to make it harder for the family. I mean, maybe he could be implying that he's going to arrest them for something. And Kate said he could have threatened. So, remembering that Holman is the same individual who interrogated Kyle Fortson about the leak. And we know from just the brief summary of what that interrogation was like, because that didn't seem to me, at least, like a custodial interview. Like a non-custodial interview, because didn't he ask for an attorney several times? Or he said he didn't want to talk without his attorney?
I sure think that he did. Yeah, it just in the two now examples that I have of Holman talking to someone, he seems aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of puts you in a corner. I absolutely agree with what you're saying about Fortson asking for an attorney, and you've got to think too. And I know some people may have a differing opinion in this, but when you're in a little interview room, I mean, I've seen an interview room before.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I'm a criminal, I'm just simply saying it's a small room. It's a small room, and when you are in there in a little box, and Holman's not a small guy, there's definitely an intimidation factor
Oh
that
my
you have to
God.
consider.
Yes, he's a large man, but he also, to me, he seems like a guy who maybe is not. So Tony Liggett, everyone knows how I feel about Tony. I think he's a snake. I think he's dangerous. But I don't think he's stupid, and I think that he is, from my perception, Tony is much more in control of his emotional reactivity, maybe.
Mhm.
Right? He seems, at least, to keep a cool face under pressure. Holman seems like a guy who flies off the handle, honestly. He seems like kind of a hothead, and it seems like he let a lot of emotion drive that interview, because he literally made it personal. I know you did this, and I'm gonna prove it. Like, wouldn't, at that point, you should have proven it. You're arresting and charging him.
Exactly right. I think people need to remember that these law enforcement officers who do these interviews, they are trained. I mean, they have real training that is supposed to assist them in these interviews. And, oftentimes you'll see in a law enforcement officer or detective, whatever, they'll go to their tool set, right? And if they are not getting what they're wanting, they'll pull out another tool and then another tool. But with Holman, I agree with you. It seems like he has trouble keeping things in check, because the moment that he starts not getting what he's wanting, he just jumps straight to aggression and anger.
Threats. Yeah, threats. Also, Courtney, if you're in the chat still, Yellow, you said something earlier about, so Courtney noticed like either a discrepancy or like an omission or something, but I was under the impression that Tony Liggett made the arrest, like the actual arrest, slapped the cuffs on him, right? I thought that Tony Liggett arrested Rick, and I feel like in one of the early documents, didn't it suggest that? And this is like an open question because I don't know, but I feel like I didn't know that Holman was the one to make the arrest. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I said last night at near the end that when it came to unified command, at least early on, it seemed like the FBI had a guy they thought did it, And then it seemed like the Indiana State Police had a guy that they thought or they wanted to be the one to have done it, being Keaton Klein. So it seemed like, each agency kind of had their own guy. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was interested in whose guy was Richard Allen. Um, were they in agreement, or did one of the specific agencies come up and say, okay, this is our guy? So I was under the impression that Liggett was the one that made the arrest also.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking. So Low Light Recovery made a comment here, and I don't know if everyone's probably not familiar. So motivational interviewing is a therapy modality, evidence-based therapy modality, and it is used often. And Low Light, please, in the chat, or I sent you an invite too if you want to come on and actually talk about it, because I agree with you. I believe that this technique was kind of was giving some motivational interview. Obviously, we would hope that in a therapy setting, when you're treating like a substance use disorder, a lot of times when we see motivational interviewing used, I don't think that it would ever look this aggressive. I don't think it would ever look like this. But if you want to expand on why you think that, I would love to hear it. Just personally, I'm interested. But so Steve Mullen is the prosecutor's investigator. And he is the individual who, in the first interview, they mention they're not trying to suppress that one from October 13th, but they did say that at one point Liggett and Mullen kind of like positioned their bodies to be like standing over Rick.
Mm-hmm.
And about like the Reed technique of interrogation. It's like an old school technique that it's not, I don't even think that they probably train people in Reed technique, but it's a very aggressive, combative, coercive technique of interrogation. And they've done studies that show it elicits a lot of false confessions. But
Mm-hmm.
Steve Mullen, I know for a fact, Steve Mullen is trained in the Reed technique.
Mm-hmm.
And those tactics of like standing over somebody. Thank you, Luke. Okay, I feel like I remember hearing that. Standing over somebody, or positioning somebody away from the door so they don't have a clear exit. Putting them in a stationary chair instead of like a swivel rolling chair so that they don't have the like freedom of movement to kind of expel some of the anxiety. Just like very small psychological tactics that are used in the interrogation to add pressure and claustrophobia, basically. But it's not the best methodology because it's very coercive. And I think I'd be interested to see that first interview because I don't know.
Yeah. And you had talked to me about that, Angela, with Mullen and the Reed technique. I think people need to remember, a lot of times, you'll see people say, well, I would have just said, I wouldn't have ever talked to him. I just would have said I want an attorney, or,
Right.
Things of that nature. And it's like, there's a lot of people out there that simply do think they're helping, and they don't know. They don't know any
Mm-hmm.
better. They may think that they get put in that interview room and they're like, I don't know if I'm allowed to leave or not. How am I
Right.
going to be here for 10 hours? But then you start imposing your physical presence over someone. It's especially in this case, someone who is not even, in my opinion, an average sized man. He is a
Right.
small man.
Mm-hmm.
What is that going to do to you? What are you going to potentially have pried out, whether it's true or not?
Yeah, I don't know. Luke says one of the Reed technique steps is that if the suspect cries, assume guilt. I'd be fucked. I cry all the time. I'm always crying. Like a multivitamin for me. So if that's an indication of guilt, then I'd be pretty screwed.
Right.
This is another one, Kira. So a lot of times people don't ask for attorneys because they feel like that makes them look guilty. Like, oh, if I ask for an attorney, then that means I did something wrong, right? or if I get up and leave the interview, or if I'm not helpful, or if I'm non-compliant, or if I'm, you know, a hostile witness or whatever, then I'm going to look more guilty. That is why the Miranda disclosure at the beginning is so important. Like, we need to be reminded that we're free to leave, that we don't have to talk, we don't owe them a conversation. We have a right to an attorney. Like, it's so important. And the fact that that entire chunk either never happened or they purposefully omitted the beginning of the interview. What do you think happened, CJ? Why do you think we don't have that?
I don't know. I honestly do not know. I wish that in some of these defense filings we got a little bit more than what we do, but I'm sure they may have a very good reason for not putting it out there. Or hey, maybe it's just not important and so they didn't include it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, my like knee-jerk assumption is if they had it, they'd put it in because of how like critically important it is. Now, if they're going to argue that they didn't glean anything new from this, although I don't know, because if this interrogation is what led to his arrest, then yeah, it's probably important to suppress it. But so no Miranda, why can't this case be thrown out? So without the Miranda, they might be able to suppress anything that Rick said during that interview, but that's all. I think it only applies to like statements made during that interrogation. They failed to read Miranda, so they deleted it. Yeah, and there's no waiver signed either. Courtney, what am I looking at? Oh, okay, this is the 118 one where it says that. Okay, so, oops, I'm gonna try and share this.
And you know something else, Angela, that I thought was interesting for myself. I'm speculating, of course, but just thought it was interesting to maybe try to read between the lines a little bit. There's a part in the filing where Richard says something along the lines of, look, I don't want to be a fall guy for this because you guys are trying to make a square puzzle piece fit in a round hole or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that he said that or that he thought that. And so this is the part I'm speculating on that I'm curious of. What made Richard think that? Was there other people who were brought in for interviews that they were also potentially trying to do the same thing with, and had Richard potentially heard about that at a bar or talk throughout the town of, yeah, man, they brought me in too, and they were trying to pin it on me. I would just be curious.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Like why would he, yeah. Why would that be something that he explicitly says that they're trying to do? Well, and again, remembering too that like, well, he lived there for 6, 7, however many, 5.5 years, however long it had been at the time of this interview. So he's local. He knows, probably at least has heard like stories of people that have been questioned or.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question, PJ. I don't know. I mean, I guess too, like it seems to me like Rick is a smart guy. You're not. So he's he's a 10 years he did in the Guard, CJ.
Yeah. It was about 9.5, but yeah, you call it 10. Yeah.
Okay, so like a decade in the service, no issues. We know that you have to be intelligent to, right? So there you go.
Right.
So he's at least intelligent enough to serve 10 years with a great record. He's a pharmacy technician, which is not an easy job. He has a certification, right? You have to have all of these, you got to check the boxes, and he's held a job down for however long. He owns his house. Like, this is not an individual who's unintelligent. It seems that it's certainly now from this conversation. He seems to me like he's probably above average intelligence. And if he's been living in the town in the CBS working every day for 5.5 years, interacting with the community, yeah, he probably has heard things about the investigation or people that have been.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that guy that everybody thought, like DP, for example? I don't know if locally he was suspected, but like people like that who have been at least online for a period of time had their name thrown in, and I could see that ruining someone's life.
Yeah.
So he probably has watched that happen to other people, and
Right.
for good reason doesn't want to be the next one they do that to.
Right.
So I'm pulling this up. Thank you, Courtney, because this is what Nick McClellan filed the day of the Supreme Court oral arguments. He filed this at like 10:30 in the morning in Carroll Circuit Court, while 30 minutes before the oral arguments began. This is his motion for leave to amend the charges when they wanted to change or tweak Rick's charges.
Okay.
So this was just January. This was April? Yeah, this was not long ago. 3 months ago, almost to the day. Number 2 says the defendant was arrested on October 26th, 2022 by a detective with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department.
Got you.
Jerry Holman is not a detective with the Carroll County Sheriff's Department.
No, he is not.
So
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a bit of a discrepancy.
Right.
I don't know if that matters. But like, again, this case feels, it's so important. This is like objectively the most high profile case in Indiana, at least in like modern history. So it's certainly the most high profile case that Jerry Holman and Tony Liggett and Nick McClellan have ever touched. So, it says the same thing in the new filing too. So I don't know what that discrepancy is about, unless they just.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, and it seems like there's quite a few of these little discrepancies that you would think that they would get right, but they're here.
Yeah. So how does an arrest work? I know that's like a basic question, but so they arrest him on the 26th, like they put the cuffs on him at the end of that interrogation, or Jerry Holman puts the cuffs on him at the end of that interrogation, presumably. But when did they charge him? Like, that didn't happen until the 28th, right?
I believe so. I think that sounds right.
Yeah, I don't know the legality. I'm just kind of thinking aloud. It seems like I think he kind of pissed Holman off in that interview, honestly. It almost feels like personal. Like he was like not giving him what he wanted, and it became personal. I know you did this, and I'm gonna fucking prove it.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that comment.
Mm-hmm.
And you've touched on it earlier, but what an interesting comment. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I know you did this and I'm gonna prove it. Like, dude, you should already have enough to prove it at the point
Mm-hmm.
of where we were when
Right.
Richard Allen was going in there. And that leads me back to something that I thought was interesting with the filings of the motion to suppress the statements that Richard made in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard of a individual arrested and then they're in prison and they undergo a 5-month period of interrogation. So if you just start piecing this puzzle together, it looks like they didn't have enough and they were gonna potentially beat it out of Richard Allen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's entirely what they were prepared to do. And I also think that's why this is important too. So both Sheriff Lesenby and Superintendent Doug Carter were out of town. I think Carter was out of the country, if I'm not mistaken, but I know that they were both out of town traveling when this was made. which is interesting.
That is interesting. And then it, you know, again, you just start putting some of this together, and you know, of course you're speculating on it, but that makes you wonder about Carter's reaction to
Mm-hmm.
the arrest, and he's getting asked, "Do you believe this is the guy?" And you know, he doesn't say yes. He just says, "A judge signed the PCA."
Mm-hmm. I agree with Dan. He said that, you know, right or wrong, Judge Ball is going to deny this, and I think that I imagine that the defense also probably suspects that too at this point.
Mm.
So I want to find this statement. So Matt Sullivan and I are good friends, and I met Matt when he lived down the road from me. And back in October 2021, before Kate and Klein was a thing, like it was at a very like stale kind of like a lull. Nothing was happening in the case in October 2021, as far as I remember. Matt and I wrote up some interview questions because at the time, I believe Rob Ives was like kind of chatty. He was talking to like media and he was giving interviews. And so Matt, I believe, reached out to him and asked him if he would answer some questions that we had in writing. And Ives agreed. And I want to read something that he said because it has stuck with me, and it kind of, I don't know, it just, with Ives resigning like 5 months after the murders, and okay. Oops. Bear with me for a second. Yeah, I mean, you can talk if you want. I have to kind of scroll through to find.
Okay. Yeah. I just don't have, I haven't had a good feeling about Richard Allen being the right guy
Yeah.
at any point during this, but I just keep getting the feeling I'm getting pushed farther in the direction that he's not the right guy, and that's the last thing that you want the closer we get to a trial. And
Mm-hmm.
it's scary that that's what's happening, because I think everyone wants the right individual to be
Yes.
the individual in custody. But I, and you know, I understand everybody's has differing opinions. However, I'm having trouble seeing that, given where we are right now with the information we have, how people could feel good about Richard Allen being the guy.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put this in the chat just so that we can see it, but I'm also going to read it. So the question that Matt and I asked Ives in 2021 was, in your opinion, what is a reasonable amount of time between the identification of a suspect? Oops. There we go. It's going to send in a bunch of parts. In your opinion, what is a reasonable amount of time between the identification of a viable suspect and arresting that suspect in a case such as this? And Ives answered, as is the case for several of your questions, there is a definition problem here. Viable suspect is not a term I would use in talking about arresting a suspect. The real issues are twofold. One, is there probable cause to support an arrest? And two, even if there is probable cause, is the evidence available likely to improve if the suspect is not arrested? No one can be arrested for a crime unless a court determines there's probable cause, more likely than not, to believe that the person committed the crime. In addition, rarely if ever does a case improve after an arrest. Generally, a person should not be arrested for a crime unless the state believes there's adequate evidence to convict that suspect. That is, that the available evidence is adequate to convince a jury of the suspect's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That was like one of the best things that I've ever heard. I'd probably say, but that basically flies in the face of everything that they have done when it comes to Rick Allen, in my opinion.
Absolutely agree. It's so that statement there that you just read, the exact opposite is what's happening.
They arrested Rick, and they then have been trying to build a case around him. My opinion is that the best and only evidence that they have, if you even want to call it that, against Rick are these incriminating statements he made after 5 or 6 or 9, however many months of being in DOC, solitary confinement. Like, that's the best evidence that they have came months after he was even arrested. That is terrifying to me.
I agree. It is terrifying. And not only is that terrifying, and it's also, you could argue, sad, and just speaks to the low level of this investigation, because if that is their best evidence, I mean, they had 6 years. And if that's the best you can come up with, then we're in trouble here.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I watched All Eyes. I think I saw All Eyes. I don't know if you're still in here, but I watched the video that All Eyes put out earlier today, or maybe I think it was today, but it was just the statements of Todd Click, Greg Ferenczi, and Murphy, the 3 officers who from the Rushville and FBI who did their investigation of the suspects, like the Odin's suspects. So All Eyes went through and did a video where all of the defense team statements and, additional comments were removed, and all they included were things that came directly from Ferenczi, Murphy, and Ferenczi, Murphy, and Click. Like, just their statements, so that nobody could say the defense was spinning them or anything. And I went and I listened to that video, and it was the first time I think I had really meditated on the info from Frank's memo. I understand so much more now why Click was the one, I think, who sent the letter to McClellan in May 2023. I understand now so much better why Todd Click was so concerned that after reading Rick's PCA, compared to the evidence that they had put together on, this other individuals, it's not even comparable.
Right. Right.
No, I'm no wonder he got a lawyer. I initially I was like, oh, that seems kind of drastic. Of course he really was concerned and confused, and it makes a lot of sense to me now, having gone back and reviewed the video that All Eyes made. There was so much, there was a lot of circumstantial things that made those suspects way better suspects than Rick.
Yeah. And that's just with what we know, right? We don't know everything that Click and the other officers had on this other avenue. And something that I wish we could see, we'll never know, but it'd just be interesting if they arrested one of these other suspects that they believe that they had more on, what would it have looked like? Would they have had to have investigated after the crime? Would they had to have resorted to some of these tactics that are being used against Richard Allen? Or would they have had enough initially, and then maybe a couple months later you get the rest that you need that points you, okay, this person either did it or they were directly involved? I'd just be curious in how that would have looked.
everything about Rick's arrest seems desperate, reactive, rushed, like everything about it. Like, why? I mean, I have my own opinion as to why he was arrested when he was arrested, but it makes no sense. He had lived there for 5.5 years. He hadn't, like, he had never absconded. He didn't change anything. He didn't put it, like, then this is a good comment too. I don't know that they can. We've not seen that they can place him at the bridge other than, I think Elvis said he was on the bridge. But anyway, why did they have to arrest Rick when they did, given how little they had? And my belief is because Tony Liggett needed to win the election, because the candidate that was running, the independent candidate that was running against Tony at that time, was spanking the pants off of him and was doing quite well, and I don't think that Tony anticipated he would even have somebody file as an independent. And what he thought he had in the bag all of a sudden was kind of like slipping through his fingers, I think, and he realized there was a very real possibility that he would not be elected sheriff. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And I wonder how, I mean, that election, 54%, I think, voted. We know most people do straight ticket in Carroll County. 54% of people voted for Tony Liggett, which means almost half of the population voted for an independent candidate, which is also unheard of. So how might that have played out if this arrest was not made? That's not a big margin.
No. Yeah, and I think you and I are in the same line of thinking when it comes to the election and the timing of the arrest. But I agree with you. It's not a big margin of all. You know, it's by the skin of your teeth. And had that arrest not have been made, it's a very fair point. What's that number look like then of those who voted for you?
And imagine if you are a resident of Carroll County and you've been impacted, directly and acutely by these unsolved murders, and all of a sudden you get, an arrest is made, and at that point, they also left the probable cause and charging info sealed until after the election too. So at that point, nobody knew, what. No one knew anything. All they knew was that an arrest had finally been made. So if I were a voter and I believed in law enforcement, as most people in Carroll County believe in law enforcement and trust them, I would probably be hesitant to vote. Like, why would you disrupt, right? Why would you disrupt the sheriff's department by maybe electing somebody who's not even from the sheriff's department, right? An outsider.
Right.
I can understand why people would be maybe hesitant to vote for anyone other than Tony. Like, they want to see this through. They don't want to interrupt the progress that had finally been made. It's so fucked.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And I wanted to point something else out too, and I hope I'm remembering this right. So Angela, if I go off the rails, stop me. But
Yeah.
Holman did Holman tell Richard Allen in this interview that we get today that they tested others' guns?
I don't think so.
No, he did not say that. Okay.
Unless,
For some for some reason I thought I had seen that, but if either way, I sure would love to see the number of guns that they did test, or if it was only Richard Allen's.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. And I think DB had to leave, but he's kind of our resident ballistics toolmark expert in terms of the examination or the test that they conducted on that bullet, which, by the way, and I'll wait until I think he can probably, and then I'm gonna let Low Light is here, so we're gonna invite him in a second. But it's not technically even ballistics, right? Ballistics is only dealing with fired rounds, if I'm not mistaken. So what they did, it's like they're inventing their own It's just the weakest thing ever. Okay. We've got a guest. Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Welcome.
Okay.
Thank you for hopping on to the first live ever of the RNM channel.
Well, that's awesome. I'm honored.
I am so interested. You do not have to share anything personal if you don't want to, but I saw your comment and just what I know, you are an expert in. I would love to hear a little more about how this interrogation reminded you of motivational interviewing. Like that I hadn't thought of that, but
Well, so it goes back to I was standing in the hallway with a client, and an ops director came by, and he was listening. You and I do similar work, I think. And he asked me about my approach when I was talking to the client, and how I was mirroring what, the positives that the client was giving me. And he started telling me, because he had been a former detective, and he started telling me how they use that in their interviewing work. And he looked in my office and he pointed at the wall on the motivational interviewing book that I had there. And he said, I've read that. And I was kind of surprised. And he said, yeah, we use it. We call it rapport based. I sent you a PDF on that.
awesome.
But I think, what I saw with what I was really saying was that you can be manipulative in a bad way using that kind of technique, right? And you had said, you hope you don't see those kinds of things, but that is definitely possible.
Yeah.
And, mostly what I saw, I saw some humanity in Richard Allen, which is what I've been looking to see,
Yeah.
I think the lawyers are doing an excellent job. I am like a lot of people. I really can't put my finger on it, but when I looked in his eyes in that mugshot, I just thought to myself, this guy is the guy that killed these girls, right? And then when the Franks memo dropped, and everything after that, it's just been one thing after another, and this is just one more thing that.
Yeah.
And Richard Allen knew it. These guys don't have anything.
I agree. Yeah, that's interesting. So the person was actually law enforcement, and he had actually read that book in training or his own whatever to help
In training.
to help him. Yeah, I don't know if I like that.
They call it rapport based interviewing, and they typically use it when in crimes of passion. So whenever you see a police officer relating to someone, you know why you did this, and they start with that relation. Like if somebody did that, if I caught my wife with somebody, boy, I tell you what, man, I'd kill him too. Right.
Yeah. Because you're meeting them where they're at, right? That's a big component of motivational interviewing. You it's a very non-judgmental approach to really, you're connecting with someone, you're trying to recognize the humanity, you're trying to see the similarities that you share with that person versus othering them. And
when Holman said that,
yeah,
he said it. He said, you're not a bad guy. And Rick Allen's like, what do you mean I'm not a bad guy? You think I killed these girls and you're. Yeah.
I totally. So it's like Holman trying to practice motivational interviewing, but being very, very bad at it. And I don't like that. It's it is an effective modality, especially dealing with ambivalence, which is, I guess, if you believe someone is guilty and they're not admitting it, then I guess you could kind of see that as ambivalence. But it's like they're weaponizing therapy. I don't like it.
Well, somebody said earlier, that Richard Allen didn't exhibit any of the behavior that the FBI had. And, what we're left with is just literally every angle is pretty wild. Like the best thing, I guess, would be that, they really have something on Richard Allen and they're going to dump it on day one in the trial. And other than that, you're left with, there's an election coming up and this guy is a patsy.
Right.
You're left with, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah.
And it's sad that like at every turn when the judge could show, you know, some impartiality, could show
Yeah.
that, you know, she wants this, you know, the truth to come out, it looks like she doesn't want anything to do with that.
I agree with you. It's fresh. It's disappointing. And I know, like, at least, so when Judge Diener recused himself back in November, like right after Rick was transferred to DOC, so Judge Diener recused himself, and I remember feeling very, very hopeful that a outside judge that the Supreme Court appointed was taking over. I was like, yes, and it's a woman. I was just really all about it. I didn't know anything about Judge Bill at the time. I'm not from Indiana, so I really had like clean slate going into it. Actually, I probably was giving her like too much credit, my own bias. I was like, yes, a woman. But very quickly, I'm not sure when, you know, our little tribe here started to have some questions, but I wasn't thrilled with the gag order. Mostly because it just does not, you can't gag a non-party, right? The family members were gagged. I was like, that's not a thing. But I was like, okay, whatever. But then she wasn't issuing orders. She wasn't doing anything. I remember thinking, like, when is she going to do something? And then when the emergency motion was filed by the defense in April, right after, that's when we got the picture of Rick, how much he had deteriorated for the first time, was when we got insight into what was going on. That was an emergency motion, and she didn't rule on it for almost, days, if not weeks. And when she did, her remedy was that they would talk about it at a June hearing. And I don't get her.
Well, that showed, you know, she did not care about Rick.
Yeah.
Did not care. Whether
Yeah.
she thought that was a defense strategy or she's got something else going on, I have no idea. But you guys have been kind of the like the voice for so many people who have looked at this and they were just like, what the heck? You know? It's like, I don't know anybody. I'm sort of local. I'm Southern Ohio. But when those girls went missing, it was huge news. It was all over the news here. And everybody was glued in. We all thought that that was going to end in just a few days. They're going to catch the people who did this. They didn't. And, you know, now where we're at, you know, there are so many people out there just ready to take whatever authority gives them. And I've been, you know, I've been one of them, you know, like if I see somebody is arrested, I think, you know, but this case has got me looking at other cases like, wait a minute, you know, I don't know. It's a tragedy, you know, for, you know, justice and for the families and for all of us. And it's just happening in front of our eyes. You would think that after the slapdown she got from the Supreme Court, but it's like after that, instead of taking that under advisement and maybe kind of showing some impartiality, it looks like she's committing career suicide in front of us. Like,
yeah, it's almost like she's like, to me, it seems like these kamikaze acts of defiance almost. Like she must know that on some level that she's not going to be her Supreme Court judge, you know, dreams are probably, I don't know. It's almost like she is, I'm not diagnosing her, but some of her behavior really feels like a distorted, kind of disordered personality where any, like, I don't know. I think that the defense really just personally pissed her off when they issued this, like, media release or whatever. And then it's like immediately she retaliated with a gag order. And ever since then, like, I don't know what they did to her, but it feels very vengeful and vindictive to me. Like,
well, she came out of the gate like that, at least for me. And when I see, you know, the other judge recusing himself and mentioning his family as a as a motivating factor, I don't know. I don't have a lot of you know, things that are off the table for me.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Right.
if we're gonna say that, you know, a group of people did this, and I mean, if you look at, I've dealt a lot with people coming out of prisons, a lot of affiliated people that I've dealt with, and so much of this smacks of, you know, gang affiliation.
Yeah.
The, you know, the odinism, you know, there's not really a text. There are a couple poems, there's a text, but there's not a lot of copies of that, and there's very few people that can really read runes.
Right.
So you have a religion that's ripe for self-interpretation. I think that night when the Frank's memo dropped, I read that thing 3-4 times, looked up everybody. I
Yeah.
made a Facebook profile. I didn't even have one. I made
That's
up a
awesome.
Facebook profile, so I'm just reading all this stuff, and I'm looking at these guys, and you know, PW, PW and BH are talking about. I think they called it incidental runes, and they were
Yeah.
discussing just walking along and seeing something, right? And that is exactly what I mean when I'm saying, like, you know, ripe for just interpretation. You don't have like a history of dogma or religious text to compare it to. It is whatever the hell you want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like so dangerous. I feel like that kind of, I think we see it probably in like every or most religions and groups and movements. You know, I think that, yeah, it's things do get bastardized, to use All Eyes' word. And I think like my takeaway is the fact that several of these alternative suspects, let's call them, like for purposes of this conversation, they were interviewed very, very close to when the crimes were committed. So obviously somebody thought they were worth interviewing and looking into. They had a prolific history of violent behavior. They were part of known, like they were known members of radical extremist hate groups. Like odinism aside, PW is on several websites, like watch lists and websites about like Vinlanders. That's if they're a hate group, you know, you can spin it how you want. They're dangerous people. And not even suggesting that they had anything to do with they weren't even investigated. Like that's the thing. Like they weren't even investigated. And then when we find out all the super incriminating details about certain individuals, it's like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Did you have something to add, CJ? Because I have a question for both. Do you know about, you know, the FBI agent who was one of the three that was investigating this, and he was killed by a prison guard?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Does anybody found out what the motive was for that, or why that happened?
They've been, and All Eyes is in here too, and I know Meow was earlier. I know that recently they've both talked about transparency, but I don't believe they've released much in terms of, you know, what their investigation into him have you know, yielded. I think it's interesting that he's a former corrections officer and that he targeted, I don't know that he was targeted specifically, but the FBI building certainly was. And I guess his trial begins in June, the man that they arrested for that. So, I mean, he committed allegedly, you know, committed a terroristic act. He didn't he throw like a Molotov cocktail at the building or something?
Yeah.
I think
There's definitely some rabbit holes you can go down with it, right? With him being the prison guard. The only thing that I do think is interesting, because there are some who say, well, just the building was targeted, you know, not a specific person, but
yeah, like, you know, the World Trade Centers, that just the buildings were targeted. Like that's such a silly argument.
Right. But you don't bring a gun to kill a building. You bring a gun to kill a person. But Angela, I just wanted to say one thing real quick. I did take a look back at the filing. So in it, you know, Holman tells him, "I'm not lying to you, Rick. That would be unethical." He tells Rick, everything I'm telling you is a fact. You see Holman immediately start using the F word towards Richard Allen, which you could very easily say is aggression. But he does tell Rick that they tested other guns. So
Okay.
that kind of puts you in a little bit of a bind there, because obviously we're going to find out, who if they tested other guns. But if they didn't, well, there's a lie, right?
Right. That's interesting. Thank you, CJ. Yeah.
Mm.
I like read right over that. I didn't even register. That makes sense. I hope that they did. If they believe that this shell casing is, if they're so certain that it's connected to the murders, or that the individual who murdered the girls dropped this or ejected this, then yeah, I'd certainly hope. But I don't really have much, if any, confidence in a subjective examination of an unfired round in a gun that's made on an assembly line. It feels like it's just,
Essentially, yeah, I was essentially, their expert is going to come up and disagree with their expert.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Angela. I just don't have faith in it, because it's shaky science, if you can even call it that. And I would be even less inclined if you're going to sit there and tell me, oh, well, we tested 6 guns and it's not a match to any of them. It's only a match to Richard Allen's, because it's going to match, okay, maybe it matches mine to a 33% probability, and it matches Richard's to a 55% probability. I'm sorry, but for what we're talking about here, these tool markings, it's just not a thing. It's just not a thing when it comes to that.
And he wasn't, I mean, they weren't even killed with a gun.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I can't think of another example of another case where a crucial, like, pivotal piece of evidence has no known connection to the actual, like, murders. It makes no sense.
Right. And I've tried to think about how in the hell would the round get there, and obviously, yes, there's scenarios where the round comes out, maybe you had the round in your pocket and you go to pull your phone out, or a knife out and the round falls out of your pocket. I'm just simply saying, I have put a round in my hoodie. I've
Right.
also put it in a coat jacket, and I jumped around. I mean, I threw myself around, and the round never came out. It did not come out. So to just simply say, oh, somebody leans over and this round falls out, I couldn't get it to happen.
Well, I was wondering if they're saying that he was chambering around, maybe the round popped out because it was in the chamber.
Right.
But
But see, I don't think it would have happened at that spot. You know what I mean? I think he would have, and again, not to say it couldn't have, but, I think it's just my opinion that I think he racked it. I think he racked it prior to, you know what I mean, to the actual crime scene. Well, Light, is it just me, or did we lose Angela?
I'm not sure. We might have, but maybe you could answer a question for me. There was some rumor going around, I guess, that the crime scene was left unattended for a period of time, and then the police came back and resecured it and found evidence. Is that true?
I don't know, Light. I don't know if that's true or not. I know that Barbara McDonald made that claim on Court TV. She's the one who really started this conversation as far as them coming back. I believe the number of days was 3 days later, and then getting this round. I don't have any proof of that, and I'll just tell you, for me, there are some people who believe that, but for me, I don't believe that. I think they found it that day. I would be shocked if this is their smoking gun, and then you're going to try to tell everybody, well, we had God knows how many people walk through there. We can't tell you how many people may or may not have walked through there, but we found it 3 days later, and it only matches Richard Allen's gun. I'd be shocked. Actually,
Well,
no, I
I've
wouldn't be
heard
shocked.
wilder things.
It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
I have heard some pretty wild things. My mind has been blown so many times during this case. I mean, I don't know what is next, right? Like
Right.
literally what is next? Like I am so afraid, and I don't know if this is irrational, but that we're going to get to the trial and she's going to say all this is inadmissible, this PW thing, this whoever, because it wasn't exculpatory. This had nothing to do with this. You know what I mean? Like I'm expecting something strange like that because
Yeah.
I honestly can't. So for me, Gull's behavior seems like she does not fear any kind of repercussion, or she's afraid of some other repercussion more than losing a career. I have no idea. That's just
Yeah.
open for me. Like, is she blackmailed? Is she threatened? I don't know, but she acts like it.
Yeah. Yeah, she's either entirely incapable of feeling any kind of fear or she's riddled with fear. Like it's one or the other, but I don't know. It just, I share in your fear, your worry, because she has been so unreasonable, in my opinion, already. I mean, the burden to grant, like to get a Franks hearing, she's treating this motion they filed as if it's the hearing. They haven't even put on their case as to whether, like, that's what the hearing is for. Like, that makes no sense. And they have Tony Liggett on video with Sarah, the witness. She said something very specific and it's recorded on video.
What did she say?
She said that the individual walking down 300 North at the time of the murders was wearing a tan jacket and looked like he was muddy. And somehow that turned into he was wearing a blue jacket and was muddy and bloody.
Somehow.
Which, I mean, it's not like he couldn't review the interview to refresh his memory. So that in itself, to me, without that piece, like the PCA is even weak, like more weak. I don't understand why she wouldn't even grant a hearing. Like, to me, that's just unreasonable.
I think like everyone's gut is just feeling like they're trying to force all this evidence to fit Richard Allen. And I go off my gut a lot, and I'm totally ready to be wrong. Right. But if I was going to if I had to put down my life savings today on one or the other, I'd say Rich Allen had nothing to do with it.
Yep.
It's all based off of the way the state has been acting for no other reason.
I agree with you. I think that's where most people are at right now. And I think where you said you're at is perfectly reasonable. We don't have to go down rabbit holes and conspiracies to get to where you are. And that's I think the biggest problem people should have is if you can come at this from a very reasonable viewpoint, you don't have to put the tinfoil hat on, and you get to the place that you are, that should be a problem for everybody. And I just wanted to add this in. When we talk about the intimidation tactics, because it's my opinion that in this interview between Holman and Richard Allen, there's some intimidation there. And then I saw a comment a couple minutes ago here, Angela, that you had put up about Brad Holder being brought into the lobby when Quick was brought in to reassure him that Richard Allen was the right guy. That is absolutely insane. You can't tell me that wasn't an intimidation tactic. And Brad Holder is not a little guy. He's a big guy. He's a big guy who's got dangerous friends.
Yeah.
It's just the intimidation tactics. Why are we doing this?
That's odd. Why was he there?
Right.
That's odd. And he was in the lobby, right? They said he was in the lobby of the.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just like for a second say they had reason to interview Brad Holder on that day. Wouldn't you make every effort as a state police post? Wouldn't you make every effort to avoid any kind of like inadvertent overlap of, you wouldn't want that person to be intimidated. Like, you would just go to great lengths, I feel like, to avoid any kind of like So it to me, it's like it was on purpose, right? Surely they're not
Absolutely.
that bad at their jobs. Like, surely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I got struck by a vehicle and had to go to the local courthouse several times for hearings and whatnot, they put uh, they put us all the way to the left, and they put the boys and their parents all the way to the right. And so not only did we have the distance separating us, we also had multiple officers, keeping the peace as well. So to hear that Holder was right there, that's shocking to me.
I don't know what their track record has been like before this, other than Dan Doolin. Which in my mind, why has he got a badge and a gun? But
Yeah.
This has been just an absolute disaster. I mean, who would hire any of these people, let alone promote them?
Right.
I don't know. It boggles the mind. I don't know. I grew up in Brookville Lake, in Indiana. I do know that, it's kind of a certain way, but I had no idea that this was the level. I mean, it's mind blowing. The other thing is it's just on display for the entire planet. It is wild that, you have creators, the vast majority of whom around the world are looking at this dumbfounded. I guess true crime creators overseas look at our, judicial system as something to look up to and to aspire to. They think that's great over there in America. And they're looking at this like, this looks like some Banana Republic BS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And I agree with them. It's scary. I would never move. I would never move there.
Mm-mm.
No.
I don't recognize, like, I don't know, because the thing that really disturbs me, I think, the most is that we have, checks and balances to avoid this kind of thing, right? And I feel like our judicial system is perfect in its inception, right? In its inception, it is as perfect as we're probably going to get. But the implementation of our judicial system and our criminal justice system and our legal system is so, like, inherently flawed because we're just people, who are expected to do the right thing. And when you look at, the Supreme Court of Indiana, like, that was my, okay, it's going to be okay, right? They're going to correct this. Like, this is these are the bumpers, right? Down the lane to kind of keep this from going so far off the rails. And I understand, like, so been a paralegal for like 15 years. So I understand, like, the implications of overturning a judge's decision. That's a big deal. And then removing a judge from a case against their own wishes is a huge deal. I can understand why they wouldn't want to do that. But I don't know, even like people, like defense leaning people, I just feel like they're giving the Supreme Court a lot of, like, leeway for their decision to keep her on. Like, well, how could they have known that she would? And I'm thinking, like, we wouldn't have gotten here if she was capable of making sound, reasonable, unbiased decisions. And it's like the definition of insanity, right? You're doing the same thing over and over, anticipating a different result.
Mm-hmm.
They put her back on. I mean, they left her on, and then they put the attorneys back on. So really all we did was just prolong more of the same, in my opinion. Like, they should have been able to foresee that would have been a problem. And I believe that they should have prioritized the rights and they should have protected the rights of the accused, and they protected Judge Bull's reputation and her ego, in my opinion. And that's just, they fucked up.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I watched that like everybody else. We watched the Supreme Court thing go down, and I just saw a divided court. And I don't know, if they had, maybe there were some concessions made, when they deliberated that, okay, we're going to keep her on, but we're also going to keep, right?
Yeah.
Because I just think that, like, from the public's point of view, and they have to have some kind of finger on that pulse, right? I mean, don't
I-
they understand like how dumbfounded we are at this whole thing?
Yeah.
So there had to be some kind of concession made. I don't know,
I agree.
but we'll see.
You would hope. It just looking in this case, whether it be the investigation or the Supreme Court coming in, you can pinpoint certain points where you say, okay, if this point right here was done differently, maybe it doesn't set up a inflection point down the road. And with them keeping goal on and bringing the attorneys back, you could say that potentially set up this showdown. And I think we're kind of watching that play out. We'll see how it goes at the trial. But man, I think that if they would have got her off, we wouldn't be where we are right now. And you look at, I don't know, it's just hard to imagine how someone could come in from the outside, say you didn't tell anybody the details of the case, just strictly the judge's actions against the accused and her actions towards Brad and Andy. I don't know how that person coming in could say anything other than this woman hates the defense.
Yeah. And I'm glad we got that transcript. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was, that's what it looks like to me. And
Mhm.
I can't believe CJ's on here again after doing
I know.
25 hours. So just, like the $7,000 or whatever, you guys have raised more than that. You folks have raised more than that over the last, however long. But that's why it's so important for me to know that he's going to have experts, is because I don't feel, and I know that, someone on Twitter the other day felt I was being a Debbie Downer. I respect that opinion, but really it concerns me that if Richard Allen gets a conviction for murdering these two girls and he gets put in a prison, they're not going to care.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are very, they trust the system. They feel that there's an appeals process. And yes, there's an appeals process, but not if you're dead.
Right. That's the thing. I mean, I think Hennessy said recently on the live he did, talking about the fundraiser, which I keep forgetting to put the link. I'll put the link in a second. But Hennessy said, Rick doesn't have 8 or 10 more months. And I don't know, in my opinion, knowing what I know about the human psyche and I know humans are resilient, and it seems what we know about Rick now, he is an incredibly resilient person, because I just feel in my gut, and this is really negative and cynical, but I really believe that they anticipated that he would have either given up and I don't know, whatever, confessed. I think he tried, but
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't think that he knew what happened that day. So his confession, in my opinion, is useless because it's not real. But they were banking on Rick Allen dying. They wanted him to either be so hopeless that he ended his life, or they were hoping that he would just die. That's what I believe. And I think that they, maybe somebody else maybe would have by now. I think it's a testament to just kind of, I don't know.
It's a good bet. It's a
Mhm.
good bet. If you get arrested for something you didn't do and you get put in solitary for 500 some days,
Yeah.
some other creator, and I forget who he is, some lunatic up in Canada was saying, he enjoyed solitary. What? What? Anyhow, I don't want to take up all the time.
No, you're
I really
fine.
appreciate you letting me come on, but I do have a
Yeah.
question. What is it? You got a new documentary coming out, like a sequel to the.
Yes, the Reckoning Part 2.
When is
Yes.
when is that going to be released?
Good question. So here's kind of where we're at with that. So the case, this case, Tammy Birdsall died in April 2007, She was killed via a single gunshot wound to the head. There has been, and there still is, and there was, a lot of debate about whether her death was a self-inflicted gunshot wound or if she was murdered. I have my own opinions about it, but the case is sealed. The entire case is sealed. Shocker, I know. So we're working on obtaining the documents. Is that you, CJ, or your dog?
It's Ellie. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Aw.
I was like, are you having a medical? Just making sure we didn't need to call someone. No. So depending on, I guess, how much progress we can make with, because I don't want to. The reason that Jesse's story, I think, was so impactful for so many people was because we were confident in telling it, because we were basing our reporting off of just documents and evidence that we had in front of us. You know, nobody, I didn't have anyone else's kind of opinion or subjective like analysis about it then. And I had a lot of evidence to work with at the time that informed my reporting. I don't have that in Tammy's case, unfortunately, yet, but I'm working on it. So I would really like to put something out before the trial, because a lot of the same individuals who investigated Rick,
They keep popping up.
they keep popping up. Yeah. So Tony Liggett was the person who found Tammy's body, for example. Steve Mullen was the lead investigator on that case. Robert Ives was the person that eventually, years later, when he was elected prosecutor, he is the individual that decided to take that case before a grand jury, and a grand jury indicted this individual on 2 counts of obstruction of justice or evidence tampering, and 1 count of, I don't remember the exact charge, but manslaughter. So a grand jury believed that this man was responsible for her death, but a year and a half into the pretrial hubbub, I think days or weeks before the trial was set to begin, the charges are dismissed. So I have a lot of questions that need answers still. I guess that's like my long-winded answer. Hopefully sooner rather than later, ideally before the trial. But if anyone is like a FOIA or a records or a document expert or has any tricks to get sealed or not public documents that should be public, let me know, because I think it's an important thing to talk about. Whether it was suicide or homicide, I think that it's her story, you know, I'm going to tell it one way or another. So, yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Thank
The
you.
first one was very good, and just about everything you folks put out, you know, I think I said it the other night, you know, when you guys are posting, and, you know, I'm watching. I'm definitely a fan.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate, you know, you folks doing this, because, you know, not everyone can.
Yep.
I don't think we can stop. So we have the opposite problem. So, I mean, I think of the Delphi case, like, I think everyone who consistently follows the Delphi case, we're all sick in some way, right? Some of us are sicker than others. Some of us are sick in different ways. I think that whether it's like a pathological need to see, you know, justice or whatever it is, you know, we're all here. No one does this because it's fun. Like, we all have a reason for following what might be the most frustrating true crime.
It is a little bit like rock climbing or herding cats or something. It's masochistic at its core.
100%.
A little bit here. Every time I know that I see something that Judge Gull opens up, I know there's a possibility that my heart is going to, you know, break.
Absolutely.
For sure.
100%.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Absolutely.
Well, I am going to head off. I seriously thank you so much for letting me be a part of this, and
Absolutely.
I will
Thank
just,
you.
keep my ear to the ground.
Yep. Nice
We
talking
will-
to you.
Would love
Yeah.
to have you on again, and we will talk soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was awesome.
Angela, yeah,
Yes.
I just I just wanted to throw out this one more thing, and then I'm gonna have to lay my head down too. So
Yeah.
you got to take us
Bedtime.
home. Just something that stuck out with me again, reading the filings, and I'm sorry if you've already hit on this, because I came in a little later, but when so Holman tells Rick, hey, I'm not lying to you, that would be unethical. Tells him everything he's saying is a fact.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in these experts who say that's Richard on the bridge, and these experts saying, well, that's your voice, because obviously there are experts in fields that are going to have more knowledge than the average person, and that's what makes them an expert. However, I've got eyes and ears, and I'm going to go ahead and self-deem my expert live here on your channel that that image of bridge guy is useless. You can't. I mean, I personally see Ron Logan more than I see
I do
anybody
too.
else.
Yeah, me too.
However, there have been countless people put themselves in the same spot on that bridge, and then bridge guy kind of transitions away, and then it's
Mhm.
that person, and it matches up damn near identical. We've
Yeah.
got the forensic photo expert that did the
Lois.
transition, yeah,
Mhm.
and that wasn't for Richard Allen.
Right.
So, and then you've got, look at how many people have scoured the internet to try to hear Richard Allen's voice.
Yeah.
And they find one little clip of like 5 words. And I mean, is it absolutely not Richard Allen's voice? No, it's not absolutely. But if there's 20 other people whose voice could be consistent, I want to know who these experts are that say, nope, it can only be Richard Allen, because I wholeheartedly disagree.
Yeah. Are you talking about what Holman said to Rick in the interview?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I don't even think that that's, I mean, I think that what the defense is saying is that that's not true. It's that he lied. Like, there are no
Right.
experts, right? So, I mean, the only thing that and obviously I'm not an expert, but the only thing I could reasonably see them like being able to determine from that video, I mean, he appears to be a white man.
Right.
And you could probably, I think that they could and probably did get a good height assessment at first. And they said he was what, 5'8", 5'10"?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I trust the FBI. I don't know where they got that from, but I'm pretty sure that you could get a pretty close, at least a height range from that video. I know there are ways to do it. Now, why they took the height and weight off of the flyer 6 months, 9 months, however many months before they arrested Rick Allen, I don't know. I think it's a question that should probably be answered at some point, but
Yeah. But it just goes back to the tactics that these guys are using,
right.
the lies that they're saying. If I'm to believe that they have an expert or experts saying that that's Richard Allen and saying that that's his voice, let's not act like Richard Allen was held up in a bunker in Pakistan. He was right there in Delphi
Right.
at the CVS.
Right.
It wouldn't have taken 5 years to catch the guy if that was true. So I do not believe that that was a true statement. But yet you have Holman saying, buddy, I'm not lying to you. This is all a fact. And that would probably scare you if you were Richard Allen. Oh my God, they think it's me, and there's experts saying it. Absolutely, that would scare you. What's the
Yeah.
purpose of that? But Ange, thank you very, very much for letting me on. It's been awesome, and it's always fun to talk to educated people. So I appreciate it, and I'll be in here listening.
Bye, CJ. Thank you. Go to sleep pretty soon. I'm probably going to wrap up because I don't feel like I have a whole lot more to add to the conversation. I'm so grateful for everyone hanging out tonight. And thank you, CJ and Lilite and DB for joining us. Y'all are the best. Yeah, I have a lot of questions that I would like to get some answers to. I'm working on a video. I'm probably going to title it All the Reasons That Tony Liggett Belongs in Fucking Prison. but I still just feel like if we had the benefit of a unbiased or even like a less biased judge, I'm just wondering, like, I would really like to see a Franks hearing. I don't think it's unreasonable to, she hasn't granted them a single hearing. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me. We've not had a single like evidentiary or meaningful hearing. The contempt hearing was the closest thing we had, and then obviously the motion to dismiss hearing, she did grant them that, so never mind. But I don't think we're going to get anything before a trial, unfortunately. I don't think we're going to get a Franks hearing. I don't think we're going to get anything. I don't think she's going to suppress anything. I think that it's going to all be duked out in trial in a few weeks, because we are now, what's today, 15? We're like just under a month exactly until jury selection. And I need to do one important thing before we leave. Keep forgetting. So we're at $39,300 in this expert fund, which is wonderful. $45,000 is the goal. In my opinion, that's not anywhere near what they should be afforded in a case of, double murder. But would that work? I don't know if y'all can put maybe, I don't know if my link works, but and then the last thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna look at our poll. I can't see it on here. Yeah, if anybody is not in the, it did work, okay, cool. If anyone is not in our Discord and wants to be, oh, Bob is live, okay. Everybody go watch Bob after I get off here in a second. Our poll says, I can't see our poll. Can you see the poll? Was it a custodial interview or not is the question. Anyone know? Survey says. I guess we'll never know. If anyone would like the 50, oh, thank you, Luke. You're hanging here, guys. Okay. Was it a custodial interview? 54, yes. 46, no. Say more, Luke. Surprising how? Because I'm not really sure. Like, I could see it. I mean, I'm certain that they will argue, both sides will make convincing arguments one way or another. I think the absence of Miranda really is the determining thing for me. That's a problem, in my opinion. That's a big problem. I don't know if y'all are on our Twitter. This is a different audience. Oh, yeah. That's a good point. I think we have Luke, I feel like, yeah, you're right. I feel like we do have what I like about this like community. I think that we are probably more defense leaning. I feel like there's a lot of like reasonable people in here though. Like, I don't know if that was a custodial interview or not, even though I believe wholeheartedly that Rick's innocent and being railroaded. Yeah, exactly, Luke. I think that there's a lot of critical thinking amongst our friends here, new and old. Interesting. Last thing, I'm gonna put the unraveling. Oh, I haven't even plugged the unraveling. If y'all are not following and or subscribed to the Unraveling YouTube channel, please subscribe. 1/3 of our brave little group will be doing a live on the 17th. I think at 6 p.m. You do not want to miss that. And I put our Twitter too in the good point, DB. I put our Twitter in the chat. So if anybody, wants to contact us offline, or if you want the Discord link, just send us a DM on Twitter and follow us on Twitter, because sometimes we're funny, but a lot of times we try and be informative. Don't follow us if you don't like curse words. And I feel like that's everything. Thank y'all for being nice. I don't know if anybody was unkind in the chat, because I guess the mods, I'm like a horse with you put like blinders on. I only see the nice stuff, but I appreciate everyone being here. I'm going to go to sleep now, and find us on Twitter. Fuck the police. I'm sorry. I had to. And I love y'all. Let's keep pressure on. I think we need to keep some pressure on the Indiana judiciary. That's the last thing I'll say. Objective. That's my subjective opinion. Everything I said tonight was my opinion, by the way. Don't come. Okay. Good night, everyone. I love y'all. DB, thank you for your animation. Should I put? No, I'm gonna probably post it on the RNM. Maybe I'll make it into a short. And yeah, this was fun. Good night, everybody.